So I asked Becca and Harry a few questions. I asked how they met, for example. Now, Becca gave me a very long and comprehensive response. So she told me that she'd met Harry at the George, a local pub, and he was working on the harvest on a local farm alongside his brother Joe, who Becca had met previously through mutual friends. Now, Becca's best friend Alice, where are you, Alice? There you are, was also working on the farm at the time, and she knew Harry fairly well, and she introduced Becca and Harry to each other. So this encounter takes us back to about the summer of 2012. And Becca says she remembers feeling quite shy when she first met Harry because he was so smiley and upbeat, and she could tell he was quite an outgoing chap and up for a good laugh. And she also remembers thinking he somewhat resembled Orlando Bloom when he started in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, God.
She said it was the chiseled cheekbones. But she doesn't think Harry recalls this first encounter quite as well as she does because he was a few pints down. So fast forward to September 2015. It was a friend's 21st birthday with an Austin Powers themed party. Now, Becca knew Harry was going to this party, and she made a tactical plan as to how she could get his attention. She knew that Harry smoked, and he wasn't much of a dancer, so it was pretty much guaranteed that he'd be found outside with a cigarette in one hand and a pint in the other. And it was obvious to Becca that if she wanted to increase her chances of getting into conversation with what she describes as this sultry-toned northerner, she had to engineer being in his company. So she made a conscious decision to take up a social smoking habit. And it worked. So Becca bumped into Harry outside. They're both having a smoke, and they chatted and laughed about all sorts of things that evening. And after the party, Harry was intrigued by Becca, this mystery woman who cropped up in the smoking area of parties. But again, after that party, they didn't see each other for a while. So Alice bumped into Harry. It's quite a story, isn't it? Alice bumped into Harry, who mentioned to her that he quite liked her friend Becca. I think his exact words were, "Who is your friend Beck? I don't see her about much. I like her, but I don't like her full fringe."
Oh dear.
And then after receiving that message from Alice, Becca got more feedback from Harry via another friend, similarly mentioning her fringe. So Becca took these comments on board and she grew the fringe out. Okay, so now we move forward to March 2016. We're at the Badgers Ball, and apparently a much more eventful night than I was given the full detail about. But Becca knew Harry was going to the ball and would be sitting at her table, and she was feeling really excited but nervous to see him again. And she remembers walking in and seeing him and thinking, "Oh my God, I'm really nervous now." And he was looking very handsome in his black tie outfit. So they sat next to each other at the table, at which point Becca started to drink rather quickly in an attempt to quash her nerves. And then she remembers thinking midway through the evening, right, it's now or never, Beck. So fully loaded on wine and Jaeger, Drunk enough not to care, but sober enough to execute the task in hand, she marched across the dance floor.
Can you ask us if we can sit down again?
Do you want to sit down? So she's marched over to where Harry was sitting and she kissed him quite forcefully. And then there were all sorts of other little events that night. There was a hiccup apparently with a door, a chair and a handbag, and the night was cut short. But Becca woke the next morning to a message from Harry saying, "You are a liability," which she took as a compliment, and they started dating. So it's taken me a good 5 minutes to relay to you Becca's answer to that question. It's going to take me less than 5 seconds to share Harry's reply. He simply said, "Beck stalked me."
How did you fit all that in a box?
Okay, so I asked them just to tell me their first impressions of each other and some of those favourite early memories. Now, Harry says Becca was a mystical creature in his memory when he woke up after nights out, and that she used to hunt him down late at night when he was at his weakest. And his favourite memories are of them being young, wild and free, belting around on his motorbike with Beck on the back in the sun and going to lots of parties. And Becca, as I've already said, was quite smitten with Harry very early on, and her first impressions were that he was handsome, funny, outgoing and kind, and you could just tell he was a good guy. And good memories, that summer of 2016 especially was a great summer. Loads of parties and balls and just getting to know each other in the early days of their relationship. Now apparently everyone knows how much motorbikes mean to Harry. It's his passion. And Becca remembers one day Harry's housemate at the time suggested they go out for a bike ride. And Becca knew this housemate was expecting her to chicken out, but she jumped at the chance just to prove him wrong. And Harry, who reported to be a bit nervous to take her out on the back, agreed, and off they set. And Becca does remember feeling a bit guilty because growing up, her dad had always said, "Don't get on the back of a motorbike." So sorry, Tony, but it had to be done. So with things moving on, I asked Becca and Harry to then tell me about that proposal, the engagement. So Becca's version is it's May 2019 and off they went on a 2.5-week trip to France in Brenda, the camper van, with the motorbike in tow. And it was an awesome trip. They stayed in a beautiful rural site, really in the midst of nature, and just riding around every day without a soul in sight. So they got back after a long day out, and Becca suggested a walk through the meadows. It was so peaceful. It was a glorious evening, G&Ts in hand, and they stumbled upon a herd of cattle. So with Becca's attention focused on the cows, she hadn't noticed Harry going down on one knee. And then he said, "I've got a question to ask, will you marry me?" And he presented her with a beautiful ring. But Becca didn't even look at the ring. She was so dumbstruck, not believing that Harry had chosen her to be his wife. And of course she said yes, and that moment was just so magical. Harry did apparently later mention he wished he'd asked her towards the end of the trip, not so early on, because he'd not anticipated the huge amount of wedding planning chat that he then endured for the rest of the trip.
And 3 years.
So then here's Harry's slightly shorter version of the proposal, and I'm going to read it exactly as he told me. "We were on holiday in France having a gin and tonic watching the sunset. The next day, Becca drove my beloved camper van into a car park with a height barrier and swiped the roof rack off. She was in tears and offered me the ring back so I could pay for the damage. Okay, we're getting there, I promise. So I asked Becca and Harry to tell me what they most like, what traits and characteristics they really like in each other. Harry says Becca is kind and generous with a great sense of humour. And Becca says Harry is honest, hard-working, outgoing, kind, considerate and driven. And she said that they both share very similar morals and values. They both want the same from life. And in the interest of balance, I also asked them to tell me what little things annoy them in each other. And Becca says, to be honest, not much really springs to mind. Harry doesn't really annoy her. They get on well, they don't argue. They have disagreements, but they respect each other's outlook. She says if she has to pick something, it would be Harry coming home 6 pints later as opposed to the 2 pints he said he was going out for. Especially annoying when Becca's asleep and then he wakes her up to have those deep, meaningful conversations. And Harry's only criticism of Becca is that she's not a millionaire. And then finally, I asked them to describe each other in just 3 words. Harry says Becca is funny, caring and determined. Now Becca says Harry is northern, a drunk and motorbike mad. And then, I know, strictly. And then she added more seriously that he is loving, outgoing and charming. But really, she said there are just so many words she could use to describe Harry. But of course, a new chapter today begins in Becca and Harry's love story as they step now into their future as husband and wife. And we all hope there will be so many more happy chapters to come. Well, it's okay, do you want to all stand up?
Hey, where did we go? Days when the rains came down in the hollow, playing a new game, laughing and a running, hey, hey, skipping and a jumping in the misty morning fog with our hearts a thumping and you, a brown-eyed girl. Tuesday and so slow, gone down the old man with a cheers.
Yeah, and then we got the back.
Thank you, Rebecca, for an amazing day, and Harry, cheers, all the very best. Love you lots, congratulations.
The sun will be shining, and I feel that when I'm with you, it's alright.
Yeah, you can stand up at the party.
I know it's right.
Michael.
I knew that.
Who's lovely? Yeah, was that like, yeah.
To you, I'll give the world. To it's alright. I know it's
there.
Do you want more?
That's it.
Yo, DJ, spin that shit. DJ Doggy.